Welcome to the Hockey Writers Prospect Corner, a show with our top prospects writing crew, bringing you the latest news, analysis, scouting reports, mocks, rankings, and much more. From the World Juniors to the NHL draft floor, from the farm to the NHL, our team covers everything that happens in the world of prospects. So sit back, grab a notebook, and get ready for Prospect Corner.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to a brand new episode of Prospects Corner. My name is Greg Boysen. I'm taking over the hosting duties for this week's episode because we got some questions to ask Mr. Matthew Zator about his most recent prospect rankings, top 50 or 64 rankings, excuse me. And as always, we have Peter Baracchini with us for another great episode of Prospects Corner. How are we doing today, guys?
Doing great.
Good stuff. And before we start putting the spotlight on Matthew, we just kind of remind you that this week's episode of Prospects Corner is brought to you by our wonderful Morning Skate newsletter, put together by a great dedicated crew of our hockey writers every weekday morning. In your inbox, you're going to get everything you need to know to be the most knowledgeable hockey fan in your group of friends. You're going to get all the scores, all the news, plus some great exclusive features that you can only find on the Morning Skate newsletter. You can't get those on the website. You have to subscribe to the newsletter for that exclusive content. You don't want to miss it. So if you haven't signed up already, head over to morningskate.io, throw your email address in the little box there, and we'll take it from there, and you will not miss anything in the world of hockey. We promise you that. So with that being said, we're going to get into this week's topic. And Matthew Zator, you put out your top 64 rankings, your newest rankings. We're still a ways away from the NHL draft here, and there's a lot of hockey still to be played, so these things can change. But why don't you let us know who your top 5 are as of right now?
Well, it's no question. Number one's Shane Wright. He's proven. I mean, there were questions about him not being there, and we talked about it on the show, but he's number one. I mean, that's just he's been doing so much lately that to prove that he's still the number one pick for me, and he's definitely first overall. Coming in second is Logan Cooley, who is also inched closer to that first overall status. He's just an amazing two-way forward, and I think he's going to come slot in right next to Wright. Number 3, Joakim Kamel. 4, Matthew Savoy, and number 5, the great Slovakian defenseman, Simon Nemec. And those are my 5.
All right, Peter, you're one of our other big rankings experts. What do you think of that top 5? What do you agree, disagree, move it around a little bit? What do you think?
Hard to disagree because I have the same 4 in my top 64 from December, the World Junior edition. Obviously, my another ranking is going to come out in the next month or two, so that's obviously going to change. But at the same time, Logan Cooley at number 2 is obviously, the best choice at this point, considering how much he's improved, not only throughout the season, but from the end or from the beginning of December on till now with his play at the World Juniors, albeit small sample. And for him to come back and still be a dominating factor for a team or the U.S. national development team. Yeah, I mean, Kemo at 3, Savoy at 4, Nemec at 5. I think all those 3 are probably interchangeable. But you know what? That's probably rounding out maybe the consensus top 5, depending on what happens with the break, or not the break, but the Olympics, and a certain player that's ranked outside the top 5 at this point. And I know Matt's going to get to that very soon. But yeah, no, I Cooley at 2 is great. Kemmel maybe dropped off a bit, but again, he's the offensive scoring power and the shot and the intensity that he plays with is still there. Savoy is still top, center in the WHL despite his size, and he's still producing. Again, consistency factor maybe coming in terms of 5-on-5 versus power play, because he seems to be getting more power play minutes. But then again, the points are points no matter what. He's producing at both even strength and power play, so that's a good thing no matter what. And Simon Nemec, I big fan of Simon Nemec. I'm just going to leave it at that.
Yeah, I'll agree with most of that. I think as far as the 5 players that belong in the top 5, yeah, I think that's pretty spot on. I mean, there's some guys we're going to talk about here in a second that could easily be in there, and I don't think anybody would be upset. At this year's draft, 1 through 5, there's not a whole lot of difference as far as who's going to be the superstar and who isn't. There's not a lot of drop off. There is definitely an argument that can be made. For Cooley, nobody thought anybody would even get in the conversation of being the first overall pick instead of Shane Wright. But now Cooley, he might make you think twice at least. Kemmel has been very good, and you've talked about Nemec, Savoy, they're all good. I mean, when you're 2, 3, 4, or 5 in this draft, they're all really good players, and any team will be lucky to have them added to their prospect pool. So that's the top 5 in Matthew's rankings. So we'll move on to the next 5, the round out the top 10. Who you got for us, Matthew?
Well, you alluded to him. Juraj Slafkovsky at number 6. What he's done at the Olympics has been amazing. As a 17-year-old, this guy looks like a superstar already, and playing in a league like that, or not league, tournament like that, and performing is great. So Slafkovsky at 6. Frank Nazar at 7. He's been doing great as well. 8, Brad Lambert, and 9, Connor Geekie. And rounding out the top 10 is Seamus Casey from the U.S. national development team there. He's been impressive for me. So I know we were probably going to have some debate on that, who's, above who number 11 is, but yeah.
Yeah. And Slafkovsky, I mean, we've talked about him a lot. I'm a huge fan of that kid. He's so good, and he's playing against grown men and veterans at the Olympics, and has been arguably the best player of the tournament so far. Doesn't look, lost out there with the step up in competition, and I'm just a huge fan. I would, if I was doing one of these rankings, he'd be in my top 5. I might even have him as high as like 3 or 4, because he's just got it all. He's got the size, he's got the skill. Man, a big fan. He's the type of guy that's just, why did the Blackhawks have to trade away their first round pick this year? But I'd love to see him in one of those uniforms for sure. So that would be my only real, disagreement. Maybe have him higher. But again, as I said, it's hard to really differentiate in that group, and in the rest of the top 10 too. When you get from like 8 to 15, it's really hard to say one guy's substantially better than the next guy. There's a lot of guys that are the same skill sets, same potential. So it's a very interesting draft this year as far as, we don't have those once in a generation talents up top. It's kind of instead of 2 superstar Hall of Fame players, we've got 20 really, really good all-star players available. And are you going to get the right one? So Peter, what did you think of 6 through 10?
Yeah, I agree with your assessment on Slafkovsky. I mean, the way that he's just come into the Olympic tournament and just absolutely been lights out for Slovakia. I knew that he and Nemec were going to make a significant impact and be not necessarily different makers, but they were going to be standouts on the team. And we're seeing that with Slafkovsky right now, who has 4 goals already. And Nemec made a really nice slick between the pass in between a player's stick, and he gets to Slafkovsky, and Slafkovsky just wires it on net. That's just fantastic vision and a great awareness and shot from him. And I do like him in the top 5 at some point. I think maybe he's making that case that he's going to be there and he's going to push someone out, whether that's going to be a Savoy or a Kemmel. It's going to be really tough at this point, but also I like Frank Nazar. He's just a human highlight reel. He's really quick, hands of speed, great edge work, and he's very, very hard to knock off the puck. And he just got great balance, great awareness, and great composure. Nothing seems to phase him, and he's always doing everything at a high end speed. Lambert is, again, wild card, but I think right now in that 8 spot, if he continues to impress and maybe move up in the rankings, I think that's going to be great. Seamus Casey at 10 is a surprise, but I think it's a great one considering that, out of all the defensemen, I think you're looking at maybe the top 2 consensus were going to be Nemec Jiricek, and now Seamus Casey has thrown his name into the conversation over someone like maybe Denton Mateychuk, Pavel Mendyukov, who's also been pretty good in the OHL, Tristan Luneau, who's a very stay-at-home defensive-minded kind of defenseman, who others have him maybe in that top 20 or in that 10 to 20 range. So that's going to be really interesting. But Seamus Casey deserves that, top 10 moniker. I know we not necessarily ragged on Matt last year for having Matthew Coronado in the top 10 and 15, but that was a smart move. And I think Seamus Casey is going to be this year's Matthew Coronado in a sense.
For sure. And I think the injury to Jiricek at the World Juniors definitely helped Casey get up there ahead of him. At no fault of Jiricek, of course. But it will be fun to see how everybody knows who the top defenseman is in this draft. And then it's going to be kind of fun to see where the next 3 or 4 guys fall. And, we'll get that defenseman run somewhere, in between pick, 10 and 16, where all of a sudden they all start flying off the board. So definitely a lot of interesting storylines as we head into the draft. Top 10 is wide open. There's going to be that pick. We've talked about him a lot on this show. There's going to be a Mo Sider this year where everyone's going to be like, what the heck is this team doing? Or the Blue Jackets might, shock the world again and pick a guy that, you got to flip about 12 pages to find his name. So some GM out there is going to make us scratch our heads pretty early, I think, this draft. So will be fun. And speaking about things that are fun, it's our morning newsletter. You got to sign up for that, guys. Seriously, we don't just say it because, it's what to do. We say it because it's a great newsletter, and you guys really should head over to morningskate.io, and put your email address, sign up, get it every morning, 8 a.m. It's going to be right there in your inbox, all the great news you need. And there's going to be plenty of draft stuff, I'm sure, involved over the next couple of months. We've got our crew over at thehockeywriters.com. Peter is the fearless leader of the draft coverage, and we are going to start cranking out those prospects and profiles and get you guys all informed. And it's going to be really good. We've got exciting times, a stretch run for the NHL, the Stanley Cup playoffs, the best time of year, but then it's draft season as well. So lots of stuff to keep you busy over at thehockeywriters.com and that morning skate newsletter. So with that, you guys are 2 of our 3 big ranking experts over at thehockeywriters.com. So I'm going to kind of just throw you guys the questions, since you guys are rankers, and we'll kind of discuss where you think the trends are heading before you guys come out with another set of rankings as we get closer to the draft. So Matt, we'll start with you since we're working on your rankings today. Who are some of the other players in the first round that you have an eye on? We talked about your top 10. So who are those guys that may go, in the later of the rounds that maybe not everybody's talking about, but you think is going to be a steal?
Well, I mean, there's so many guys in this draft that I really like. And, looking at, I've mentioned him on the show before, Matthew Semenoff from the Kamloops Blazers. This guy he's just the player I love. I mean, hardworking, blue collar guy, plays the game the right way. Very skilled as well. I mean, he's got a lot of speed. I just love his work ethic. His biggest thing is his work ethic. I've got him slotted early in the second round. A lot of places have him maybe later, but I think he's worthy of a second round pick. He's going to be that guy that's going to, help a team win a cup because of the way he works out there and his forecheck and his speed. And I think he's going to be a steal in this draft, depending on if he goes in the second round or not. He's one guy that I'm really looking at. And another guy that I really like is Kaeli Odelius out in Sweden here. And he's one of those defensemen, that Swedish defensemen, and they seem to be there's always at least a few in every draft that come out and surprise and get drafted. And I've got him slide in the second round. Maybe some people may think it's a little low, but I think he's a left-hand defense. So he's not that right-hand, but there's so many right-hand defensemen in this draft as first round. So Odelius is another, mobile defenseman that every team needs to succeed in the NHL right now. So, I mean, he's another guy I kind of have my eye on. So those are two of them.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if those guys can sneak into the first round or where they slide. It's those dominoes when they start falling, and one GM goes one way and it causes a chain reaction, and then that's the excitement of the draft. It's not just players getting their names read off on stage. It's the strategy and all that fun stuff that goes on during the course of the draft. Peter, same question to you. Who's a guy outside that top 10, outside the glitz and the glamour of being a lottery pick, that you think we should be watching in the first round?
Well, I think I may have started something with Callie Odelius, because first it was Forbes and now it's Matthew. So I'm glad that you're hopping on the Callie Odelius fan club right there. I'm going to stay in Sweden, and I'm going to start off with the first one, Liam Ogren from Djurgårdens. And just be aware that, Djurgårdens has a very, very strong talent of prospects coming up through their system right now that's going to be up for the NHL draft. And Liam Ogren right now is just absolutely on a tear, just ripping it up in the J20 National League. He has 25 goals in 22 games this season. And if we delve a little bit deeper into his underlying numbers over at Pick 224, he has, among draft year players or draft eligible players this year, he has the best primary points per game rate at 1.66. And if we're going to even straight primary points per game, he's at the top as well with 1.38. So this is a guy that's doing a lot of damage offensively. Great shot, great awareness. His offensive instincts and IQ is just off the charts at this point. And Matt, I know you have him like inside that top 20. I mean, I'm fantastic, but I do think that he's going to be a name that's going to garner a lot of attention right now and move up the rankings. Because I think at this point right now, I don't want to give a spoiler. Well, I'm probably going to do it anyways. But the way that he's played right now, he's playing like a top 10 prospect. And he's a guy that maybe could jump into that role. And another one that I'm just going to go to is Jonathan Lekaramäki. Same team, Djurgårdens J20, but I have him as probably one of the best shots in this NHL draft class. And I probably mentioned it before on either my rankings or Forbes' rankings, but I'm just so enthralled with the way that he's able to create space, take the time, curl back, and just attack with such force with his spading and his agility. And a couple times where he's just like ripped the shot and it's gone off the post, bar down in, and the accuracy he has, it's just absolutely phenomenal. And these are two players where, again, Lekaramäki's top 15, Ogren is top 20. I both of them, if we're giving like a ranking of like the top Swedish prospect at this point, it's a dead neck tie between the two, because both of them are absolutely offensive dynamos right now. And I think both of them, again, I mentioned with Ogren, I think the same thing with Lekaramäki. I think he can push his way into that top 10 and be a factor that, or maybe catch a lot of teams' eyes, because they're just two really offensive, fantastic offensive dynamos at this point.
For sure. Yeah, I think those guys are turning heads in the NHL draft rooms for sure. Peter, you gave us your last rankings, your top 64. I think it was about 2 months now, early December, if I'm correct. So had a little time to see how those things have progressed. So, as you start working on your next set of rankings, who do you think is going to be one of those risers from your, December rankings to your next rankings? Who's somebody we're going to notice is going to be much higher up on the rankings?
Well, I already mentioned Liam Ogren. I had him 27th. Obviously, he was great production, and obviously the way that he's played is just absolutely fantastic. So I think he's definitely going to be a high riser for me. But if I'm going a different route, I am going to say Kevin Krasinski. I believe I had him 34th. I do think that because of his poise, his mobility on the back end, similar to that of Adelius, I'm not going to say how much of a big fan I am of his, because we already know that right now. But I as another mobile two-way strong defenseman, I really do love Kevin Krasinski and his play, and he's just been fantastic with the Seattle Thunderbirds. So I have him ranked 34th. It wouldn't surprise me, or I'm just going to say, don't be surprised to see him knock on the door in that 20 to 25 range, maybe even higher if he continues to produce the way that he's going right now, because the poise, the confidence, the vision that he has with his playmaking. I mean, just like any young defenseman, they do get caught. They do, pinch up a little bit too much when they're supposed to, but he has the awareness to know when to pinch at the right time. If he gets caught, he's able to come back and still provide pressure on the back check and be a presence defensively. So I'm looking at him to be a big riser in my next rankings as well.
Right on. Yeah, those two-way defensemen, those are the guys that the scouts, they drool over. Those are what every NHL team wants. I mean, just look at the top teams in the league now. They all have those guys on the back end that can play well in all three zones. So definitely someone to keep an eye on. Matthew, I know the ink has barely dried on your rankings, but I'll throw the same question to you as well. When you sit down for your next set of rankings as we get closer to the draft, who's a guy that you already kind of think that maybe I shortchange him a little bit, or he's been playing well, if he keeps it up, I'll get him higher?
Yeah, that I'm gonna act Liam Ogren. Seeing his stats lately, I mean, he's been just ripping it up. Yes, the junior league. I mean, yeah, it's a lower league, but it's gonna be interesting to see what he can do if he goes to the SHL and see what he can produce there. But he's got the skill to be a very great NHLer, and I think my next ranks, if he keeps this up, he could broach that close to that top 10. And I definitely agree with that. Ogren's a guy to watch, and he's just showing that he can produce and score goals. And so, I mean, I do agree with that. It's one of the best Swedish forwards in here. I mean, you can see Lekkerimäki and Ogren are the top two, or no, like top three. Noah Ostlund is just above Ogren in my rankings right now, but I think Ogren may kind of go over Lekkerimäki in the next rankings, but we'll see what happens in the next few. But definitely a guy to watch.
Well, we talked about risers, so if someone's going to move up the rankings, obviously someone's got to move down. That's just the way things go. We can't have it any other way. So let's tackle that topic. Matthew, we'll stay with you to start this one. Who's a guy that you can see coming in a little lower than you had him this time around?
Well, I'm going to stick with, unfortunately, I'm going to see, Juracek may drop again. And it's not like you said, Greg's no fault of his. He's injured, has no real chance to keep his ranking and higher. But just because of that, other guys playing better, like I said about Ogren moving up, if he moves to the top 10, someone has to drop down. And Juracek's probably the one that may have that, unfortunately, going to be dropping. And like I say, it's not because of his skill and performance or anything like that, but injuries happen, and that's what drops a lot of guys off. And unfortunately, that's probably what's going to happen with him. But if he drops, a team's going to be able to get him at a lower point, and he will get healthy, and he's going to be a top 4 defenseman in the NHL. But unfortunately, I think he's going to be the one to drop, not because of his performance, but because of injuries.
Yeah, it's tough. And his injury obviously was pretty severe, keeping him out, pretty much for the rest of the year. I don't know if he's expected to come back or not, but yeah, it's a shame, because he could have definitely been a guy that got up into the top 10 and but as you mentioned, somebody's going to get a heck of a player at a spot that, if had he been healthy, there's no way they would have. So we'll see how that shakes out. Peter, this question is probably a little easier for you that you've had 2 months to kind of digest your list, and you've probably already got your next list, almost ready to go, I'm sure, or at least a good chunk of it planned out. So who's a guy that we're going to see lower on your next rankings?
I've been a big fan of Bryce McConnell Barker from the very beginning. I've always viewed him as the two-way centerman with the scoring touch and a really powerful shot. I had him 29th in the later first part of the first round in my rankings because the consistency was there with his production. I mean, not outstanding, but still he was great with his off the puck play, his awareness, and his ability to come back and be that defensive presence as a centerman. But I think right now, seeing more of it, I think maybe that kind of a player is the best value to have in the second round in that 40 to 50 range. I think because of that awareness, because of that skill set, because of his shot, he's got some great attributes. It's just that maybe not some aren't nearly as high as some of the other players in there that are making a massive step, taking a massive step forward. Names like Philip Ice said that I would probably still have in that, late second, early first. Gleb Trikozov, who's another possible riser in my next rankings as well. So for him as well, I nothing, no fault of his own. I think it's just maybe I was maybe a little bit too high, but I still have the faith in him that he's going to be a really solid top 50 prospect. And even Ryan Chesley for me, for just some of his consistency. I had him at 23, probably going to see him drop into the second round. I'm seeing all the other names and seeing what they're able to do, getting more of a feel on them. I mean, I still love Chesley's two-way ability and be a great transitional player and breaking plays up and then moving the other way and finding that great outlook pass. I just think maybe it was a little bit too high for him in that first round. So he may drop to the second round next time around.
All right, well, there you have it. That's picking apart Matthew's top 100 and discussing guys moving up, moving down. There'll be a ton more draft coverage and talk here on Prospects Corner. It's going to be our, that's why we have this show, is pretty much for the draft. And it's going to be fun. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to it. And of course, not only tune in, listen every week here for Prospects Corner, but make sure you're keeping yourselves active over at thehockeywriters.com. Not only you get amazing coverage of the guys that are already in the NHL, but we've got a tremendous team just waiting to go to start profiling the guys who are hoping to be the next wave of stars in the NHL. So please make sure you keep following along. We won't disappoint you. It's going to be good. It's going to be great draft coverage. Unparalleled. I'm going to use that word because I think we're going to do it. I think we're going to do it better than anybody else. I said it. It's out there in the universe. So we're going to finish up this week's episode. We're going to do how we usually finish up a Prospects Corner. We're going to give out our prospects of the week. Each of us are going to shine the spotlight on somebody that's earned it the past few days, not necessarily over the week, but maybe just over the past few games. And Peter, we'll start with you. Who is your prospect of the week? Is it somebody we've heard of?
Yeah, I mean, it depends if you've been watching the World Junior Championships, keeping an eye on the Regina Pats, and a name that, I mean, he's pretty good. Connor Bedard. I mean, I'm actually working on something on him right now, and just his pace right now is just absolutely torrid. It just seems like every single week or every single game that he plays, he's putting up a highlight reel goal, and it's just absolutely amazing what he's able to do. He's on a 6-game point streak, including a 5-point outing against the Calgary Hitmen, where he scored 3 goals and 2 assists. But just going back, looking at the comparisons from the beginning of the season, and the Regina Pats aren't a very strong team. They're in the 10th of the Eastern Conference right now. But the one bright side is the production of Connor Bedard. Believe in his first 20 games, he only had 15 points. But as of late right now, he is up to, I believe, 37 or 39 in his last 15 games, way over 2 points per game average. And even so, in his last 10 games, he's had 23 points. I mean, if there were any concerns about not necessarily is the pressure getting to him or not? It wasn't because he wasn't playing well. It's because, he's on a, below average team, and seeing him right now outperform everyone else on a below average team where he's now closing in or, close to, heading to that 2 point per game average. That's the kind of production that we saw last year, where he had 28 points in 15 games, and it was around 1.8 points per game over their 62 game season. So again, not a surprise, but he's not a prospect this year. But next year, he's making a name for himself to be number one at this point, and he's probably running away with it at this point. So Connor Bedard, because of your highlight reel plays and your production, you're my prospect of the week.
Good stuff. Yeah, I think we're going to hear a lot from him over the next few years. As excited as I am to be part of the 2022 NHL draft coverage, man, that 2023 draft class is going to be a lot of fun. Yes, it is. There's going to be lots of debate on who would you take with that first pick. It's going to be good stuff. Matthew, your prospect of the week. Do we have a Matthew? Do we have a Canuck? Where are we going this week?
Unfortunately, I'm going to go out to a team that everyone loves to hate, in Toronto Maple Leafs, and pick a prospect out there, and Nick Ambrosese. If you followed what my preferences for players are, is undersized and hardworking, and this guy has both. 5'10", a little undersized for him. A fourth round pick back in 2019. This guy's been, if you've been watching the Olympics, you know who this guy is. I mean, he's been playing great with another Leafs prospect in Matthew Nyes. I could have picked him, and that would have fulfilled my Matthew quota for the for the episode. But I'm going with Ambrosese on this one. What he's done, he only has 2 assists in 2 games, but how he's been playing is he's been noticeable in the games that I've seen. And he's small, but he's sure feisty. I mean, he's just such a hard worker on the forecheck in front of the net. He's shown some skill with his passing as well in this Olympics. So, I mean, he's got 21 points in 17 games with Harvard. Captain of that team, so he's got that leadership as well. For a 4th round pick, this guy could turn out to be a steal for the Maple Leafs down the road, and unfortunately, he will be good for the Maple Leafs and actually make them a better team. So, I'm going with Ambrosese on my prospect of the week.
All righty. Well, my prospect of the week, I'm going to be a double homer and not only pick a Blackhawks prospect, but somebody who's been doing quite well for Team USA at the Olympics. Sorry, boys. Tough loss the other night. You just hate to see it. But I'm going with goaltender Drew Commesso, the Blackhawks 2nd round pick from a couple of years ago, Boston University goaltender. He has headed over the Olympics as the young kid out of the 3 goaltenders, and he has it's his job right now. He's going to be the starter. He's been fantastic in his 2 games. He's played 2 out of the 3 games for the Americans, and he's allowed just 2 goals on 55 shots. So he's got a 963 save percentage in 2 Olympic games, and just that 1 goals against average. As I said, he has a shutout in one of his starts and gave up 2 goals in the other, but one of those was a power play goal. So only 1 5-on-5 goal against in 2 games. He's got the Americans. They won Group A, so they have the bye directly into the quarterfinals, I believe. If I have this right, they're going to play the winner of Slovakia, Germany. Is that correct? It could be. They get a bye. They're going into the quarterfinals. They don't have to play that one and done kind of qualification round game. So good stuff from Drew Commesso. He's a guy that Blackhawk fans, the Blackhawks don't have a franchise goalie coming up. We've talked about some of these other guys a lot. Your Sebastian Kosas, your Jasper Wallstedts. Blackhawks don't have a guy like that. Kevin Lankinen could be a starter down the road. We still kind of don't know. They've got Arvid Soderblom, who's been really good for the Ice Hogs, but this was supposed to be the guy who was picked in the second round. It was the draft pick that they acquired from Vegas Golden Knights for Robert Leonard was used for this pick. So, he's been kind of okay his first season and a half at Boston University. He's been really good of late. We were all hoping that the World Juniors was going to be his coming out party, and he looked really good in his one game that he got in before the tournament was called off, helped beat Slovakia and a couple of those guys we talked about earlier. And now he's been really good in the Olympics. So he is trending upwards and in the right direction. And I think Blackhawk fans are, and the Blackhawks themselves are feeling much better about his future than we were, say, 2-3 months ago. Not that I don't think anybody was down on him, but it's hard to judge a goaltender just by looking at his stat sheets from a college team. They don't come even close to telling the whole story. Yeah. And we're getting a good look at what he can do on a big stage. So good stuff from Drew Cremesso, my prospect of the week. And you guys don't want to hear it, but go Team USA. And that will wrap up this great episode of Prospects Corner. Thank you guys for tuning in wherever you are listening or watching. Don't forget, one last reminder, the Morning Skate newsletter. You're not going to regret it. Morningskate.io, and sign up with your email address, and you'll get that fantastic publication sent to you every morning right to your inbox. You don't have to go looking for it. It will find you. So thanks again to Matthew and Peter for getting together and chatting more prospects. We look forward to doing this again next week and all the way up and through the NHL draft. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you next time.